What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining me on these analysis. We're going to be looking at MSTR and Bitcoin today. Currently, we're sitting at 323.71. Market's still open, so of course it's going to fluctuate. Things we're going to be looking for, of course, we've already spoken about this, but these key levels that we have here, we have these three levels. Like I said before, the bullish scenario is that we hold this, chop, and eventually push up towards this level, probably find some kind of rejection, and then start maneuvering from there. We can continue down, we can chop, try and break through. That's kind of what I can see for the bullish scenario. On the bearish scenario, when you take a look here at the week or on the daily chart, if we get a close inside of this wicking area, so when I say this wicking area, I'm referring to this area right here, where you can see there's only been wicks so far in this region. And now you can see that we are starting to break through here with an actual solid candle. So once we start getting closes inside of this wicking area, it's only been wicks so far. Once you start getting that movement down there, that starts to increase your odds of falling through the structure, because now you're starting to compromise the structure little by little, chopping through it, and then more than likely it's going to start to eventually pierce through. Then we're going to do our typical breakthrough retest, and then start talking about lower prices. Of course, if Bitcoin falls, then you can expect to fall through this level of support. We're hoping for Bitcoin to spike up, and maybe it'll bring MSTR along with it. Right now, it is underperforming Bitcoin today once again. So that's what we're going to be looking at. We still have an hour and 20 minutes. So hopefully this can turn into a nice wick and a solid body above the structure. Like I said, once you start closing inside of it, it starts increasing your odds. Because for instance, if we get a close, let's just say right here off of this line right there, that's the bottom of the candle. The next candle more than likely is going to go push up somewhere in between this area of this candle. It's more than likely going to reject off of this structure. And once it creates that fresh low, you're more than likely going to start seeing fresher lows. And then once we fall underneath here, that's where we can start to look at much lower valuations. And we can see the clear deviation from MSTR and Bitcoin right now. We talked about this before, but you can see it pretty clear here. MSTR is in the blue and Bitcoin is in the pink. So you had that area of deviation here. You had that piece right there. And now, as Bitcoin's falling, MSTR is in line with that fall. It deviated while it went up, and now it's following as it's going down, which of course we don't want to see. It's just the reality of what's actually happening currently. So keep an eye on that. Look for that continued deviation. If that were to continue happening, like I said, start looking for those lower targets, looking for that potential bear flag to actually play out. Where we've had the first one here, measure that out. That one played out pretty well. And if you bring it down over to this area and measure out the next one here, like I said before, it takes you around that area. So that 280 mark, somewhere in there, 285, 282. Remember, it doesn't have to be exact, but that's kind of how it's been playing out. And then when you pull a fib, you can see the first one pushed up to the 0.5 of 618, continued the trend down. This next leg here pushed up to the 382, and now it's continuing down, which is showing an increase in bearishness. So this first move was less bearish than this move here. This one's more bearish than this one, because this one had the ability to, this leg here had the ability to pull back to the 0.5 to the 618, which means it had a little bit more firepower for the bulls. And now it looks like bulls are getting a little more exhausted. We couldn't even make it past the 382. So it's going to show that the bears are a little bit stronger in this move here. So be aware of that. On the weekly SMAs, you can see, as no surprise, we broke underneath the 50 and we found a rejection, because this is a very powerful level. 50-week SMA, very, very strong key level of support and resistance. And of course, our daily, we have our 20 falling underneath 200, which isn't the best sign. And we somewhat found rejection off of it off the last trading day on Friday. And now it looks like we're trying to continue down at the moment. We'll see if it follows through or not. On the weekly Bollinger Bands, we are coming to the bottom band right now, but it's starting to curl down even more. So we'll see if we continue to hug it, or if we can actually use this as support, hopefully in confluence with this key level, and flip this thing around, which would be incredibly bullish. And on the daily, we're still in between the blue and the green. So in terms of the daily, it looks like we could have more downside, but on the weekly, it looks like we could potentially be getting close to a bottom, if not falling through that weekly Bollinger Band. Hopefully not, but right now it looks like we're getting closer to that point as a level of support. Like I said, if we continue to hug it, then that's going to be a completely different story, and that would mean that we're probably closing outside of this daily Bollinger Band over here. On the 8-day EMA, it looks like we came back to retest it, and we did not on the weekly. As you can see, we kind of held that trend, that short-term trend to the downside. And here on the daily, we're holding the trend to the downside, but we're hugging the band a little bit closer. And we normally come back for those retests because this has the short-term trend usually in play, like you have here, here, and so on. It always tends to hug it and come back for some kind of retest. Looks like we did just that, where we broke down, came back for our retest here, this sideways chop, and now we'll see if this is a continuation to the downside, or we can actually turn this thing around and start to see a nice move like we saw over here. The volume so far today is at 6.5 million. So maybe we finish the day at 7.5 or maybe 8 million. So that's another low volume day. The prior day on Friday was 10.8, which is still not that much. But yeah, the volume has been relatively low, and we're just kind of slowly bleeding out. We'll see if we fall through this key level of support here. Weekly RSI starting to push down to lower levels. We were hoping to find a level of support here, as we've seen support here prior, but it looks like it's not acting as support at this level here. So we'll have to look for lower targets, but you can see that this is a very powerful level. It has acted as support and resistance, floors and ceilings prior, and now we have broken underneath it. So now we'd be looking at this next level here, which could be around like 37. That could be the next floor on the weekly RSI. And if not, then we could make it all the way down to oversold territory at 30 or even lower. And on the daily, we're still holding this little bull flag that we have, but we have fallen back underneath our yellow moving average. We'll see if we can hold this sideways chop right here and eventually start to push up. But once we compromise this 36, we could start to see a push down to 31 or even back to oversold territory. Weekly MACD is looking incredibly bearish right now, increasing to the downside. The blue is separating from the orange, not looking like it's ready to curl anytime soon. But on the daily, it looks very promising, as we're all the way down to, we made it down to -16, and we're starting to push up a little bit higher. We got the blue surpassing the orange, and we did get a green flip, so that's a very nice sign. As you can see, the bearishness died out, and now we're starting to see that increase in bullishness. So that's a good sign on the daily. We'll see if it can actually continue. If not, then it might be a little fake out and a continuation back down in another red hill. But we're hoping for that green hill to start kicking back up and flowing to the upside. On Bitcoin, we got a pretty solid close. We closed inside of the structure, but not above it. We closed at around 115.352 for the weekly. We were hoping for a close at 116.2 or higher. That's okay. Maybe we can wick fill this and make it all the way up. Well, actually, we already did wick fill it. We'll see if we actually get the solid close, though. We pushed up and did fill that wick on the weekly right now, and it's rejecting currently. We'll see if it continues on down. We'll see if we get a copycat like candle of this, but in red. That would be of course, a bearish scenario. Ideally, maybe we push down, wick back up, and like I said, if we can get a close above 116 or like 117, something around there, above that green line, that's going to start to increase our odds to push up to this 119 to 120 level, which is what we're looking for. And when we look at global liquidity, you can see that we are still seeing higher levels, and it's breaking to higher prices, which is going to show that we're going to have a longer move for Bitcoin, expecting to see higher prices as the cycle continues on. We still have, till the end of 2025 in terms of time. Of course, cycles are always a little bit different, so it could shift back a little bit more, and we can make it into early 2026 for our top. We don't know where it's going to take us. It's always a bunch of variables. I do expect a little bit of volatility this week because we have the FOMC meeting on Wednesday, and the Fed should be cutting. But the market's already factoring that in ahead of time because they're forward looking. So really, what you have to be looking for are the expectations for the following months, the upcoming months after the next meetings. That's what will influence the price today. The cut that's coming on Wednesday is already factored in. That's why you saw the market moving up a little bit. And if we're going to continue to see more and more cuts, then that's where we'll actually see the effects taking place today. So be aware of that. On the total market cap, we did fall back underneath the 4 trillion mark. Not too much of a big deal. MSTR divided by IBIT has fallen off a cliff, and we did close underneath this major wick here at 4.96, and now we are seeing lower prices. We talked about this a while ago about the bear flag. A lot of people didn't want to see that, and they're mad that I talked about it because I'm just talking about what I see, saying I couldn't be any more wrong, and this is what ended up happening. We got that first leg playing out to the T. We'll see if we get the next one. Right now it is forming, and if it does play out, we could potentially see the next target at 4.64. This is why I tell people you can't just be so sure and say, oh, you're wrong for sure. There's no way that you're going to know. I don't know, and you don't know either. Nobody knows. So the fact that people come into the comments so sure of themselves is actually wild. As you can see, this is exactly what happened. And I'm not saying that I'm always right, because I'm definitely wrong sometimes. It has been playing out. And we talked about this bear flag as this was increasing. After this leg, we saw this push up, and we started saying, hey, this could be a bear flag. And we were saying, hey, it could start here, it could start here, and it started pushing up higher, pushing up higher. It ended up playing out. Of course, like I said, I didn't know where it was going to happen. It could have started here, it could have started off this point here, and it ended up starting off on this third push up higher. And we ended up getting that larger bear flag from over here. A lot of times you need time for things to play out too. It just doesn't happen in one day. I know people want, the daily chart. Each candle is a day. They want this whole move to happen in a week or a day. But look how long this bear flag took to play out from May 8th. Let me draw it out again. So starting in May 8th to this point here. And then by the time we reached that target, we reached it all the way here, August 14th. So you can literally say I'm wrong all the way from May 8th until August 14th. You can just keep telling me in the comments and whatever, how it doesn't make sense, it's wrong, and it ended up playing out. But look how long it took for it to happen. I know people want this entire move to happen in 2 weeks, in a week, 3 trading days, but it's impossible. It's a daily chart. It takes time to play out. On the SMAs, they're all curling to the downside. We still have our 20-day above us right now, and we have the 20 curling down on the 50 right now. So those are all bearish signs at the moment. And off of the EMAs, we're holding steady underneath our 8-week EMA, and our 8-day EMA we pushed up on Wednesday last week and continued the move down. So we'll be watching that again, see if we get some kind of push up. Looks like we tried and we just absolutely failed through, and the momentum's just continuing down at the moment. Tether dominance tried pushing up once again, and it looks like it's seeing a little bit of rejection, but it's Still trying to push through. We'll see if we can get a little bit of a push down. We have key levels in between here. We have these larger levels, and then we have a mid level here as well. And when we pull a fib off this most recent leg, levels that we're looking for, the 382 right now, which would be an incredibly bearish move, which would be nice for Bitcoin. If we can hold this 382 and start to create fresh lows of the 419, I think we could break through this strong level. But we'd have to get that daily close right here underneath 419. And I think we can start falling through. And then as we surpass 414, I think we could see a pretty large move as you have this clean candle all the way down to about 401. So if we get a close underneath here and eventually close back underneath here, I think it's going to increase our odds of a retest and potentially retesting this downward sloping trend line and potentially finding some kind of bounce at 401, which would be a nice move for Bitcoin. If we see this entire piece here, that'd be very nice. So we could see some higher targets on Bitcoin once this move starts to play out. Of course, tether dominance can still push up to the 0.5, 618, or who knows. So we'll just be keeping an eye out on that. That's just more of the bullish scenario. The bearish scenario is that we climb through here, retest, use that as support, and continue up higher and kind of get some V-shaped recovery. Like I said, back to the bearish scenario, you have your left shoulder potentially creating a head here, and maybe we end up pushing above, retesting, and start pushing higher, and we start to create a right shoulder, and then now we have an inverse head and shoulders for higher targets, which would be lower levels for Bitcoin. So be aware of that. Be open to both ideas. We don't know where it's going, but you can start to see it forming already. Like I said, it could start to form an inverse head and shoulders, but it also could just be forming a mini bear flag and a continuation to the downside, and then seeing a touch of this trend line here, which would be a nice spark for Bitcoin. We just have to break through this level and then this level. But I can see us breaking this level if we get that daily close underneath 419. So that's pretty much the level that we're going to be looking for here on tether dominance. On the SMAs, we are finding resistance off the 50-day. So it looks like it lined up perfectly with that and the 382. So that's confluence to the downside with this key level of support and resistance. We have our major SMA right here, the 20-week, where we found resistance. We haven't pushed up back to it yet. Again, maybe we will. But right now, we're a pretty good distance away from it at the moment. So hoping for a move down so we can see a nice spike on Bitcoin and eventually make it down to this blue line for our local top or potential cycle top. We're still in this area where we want to know if this was our local top here, or if we're going to get that secondary move down, and that's going to be our local top. Once we make this contact with the blue line, maybe a double bottom, or maybe our double bottom lines up with this one over here. So make sure you guys keep checking out the videos. I'll keep you guys up to date. Drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.